We used to channel hop. I think we've seen one goal out of the 5 games because we kept fucking channel hopping.
On a Saturday afternoon, way back in the day, when we used to watch like the scores, obviously there's never any live games on at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, but there's a Welsh channel, like S4C or something. There was always a Welsh game on live at 3 o'clock. So as soon as the scores went to the adverts, they used to put the Welsh football.
What was that thing that was a while ago with Twitter with the Welsh team? What was that again? With the radio?
TNS.
Oh, TNS.
They had a radio station that just played the same song on repeat over and over again.
Apart from the 45 minutes of action each half, it was just that same song on loop. In fact, if you go to the website now, that song is probably played.
Dancing on the streets of TNS.
Was that when Spenny played them?
Because I was at the game and I had no idea what user were all going on about, and then obviously eventually realised it's because you're listening to the radio, which was, I don't know how good the commentary was, or it was just them playing tunes or whatever.
He just kept reading out all of the tweets. So like we were tweeting about like Jamie being a helicopter engineer and all that to them, and they were just reading them out constantly.
Basically, every single thing they do in that show came for us in some way. Like, it was fucking hilarious. What a day! I wonder
what it's like on a weekly basis. Like, do they just have no tweets or that every other game? They were thinking they made it big that week when they were getting all these tweets for you, reading it.
They're realising it's 5 or 6 30-year-old men just sitting in their houses tweeting TNS.
Once you get in one time, we got a shout out. Way! Feels like it's been ages since we've done this.
We have missed a week. Week, so we should probably address that. We'll blame. Who will we blame for it this time? Is it Sean's fault? Burnsley's fault?
Nah, I was at the Hydro for my watch thing, mind.
Sure, it was Burnsley's fault.
But did you go to that Burnsley? Was it good?
It was all right. I wasn't drinking or that, but
oh Christ!
Sure.
No, it was fine. They just had like tokens for drinking, and then through the back they had like.
I heard there was a silent disco.
A band in the mid. There was a silent disco and then games and stuff like that. But I didn't go in the silent disco because I wasn't smashed. So.
Silent disco.
Quite a load of shite, man. Honestly, I gave that. I got invited into the Bristol one, and I was like, "There's no Bristol. It's in London, but in Bristol, I was like, there's no fucking way I'm getting on a flight to go down there."
I didn't even cross my mind that you could have actually went. I completely forgot that you work there. You work with the same company as me.
Just talk to each other every other day, speaking here every couple of weeks, and you didn't even know that you worked together.
Fucking message them all the time.
It shows so much talk. We've not done that in ages, to be fair. It shows so much me and you actually talk about workload together. Obviously, Chloe got better things to do, like talk about true romance.
Good
segue, Burnsy.
Thank you.
Excellent. I'll just cut the music in here.
Silky.
Sorry I don't speak moron as well as you, but let me try.
What the hell is supposed to do, you moron?
It's a moron. That's not against the law.
Gun! You fucking moron.
Dressed up like Batman.
Because he is Batman, you moron.
What are you, a fucking moron? Huh?
You moron. Drop dead. Moron.
Whoa!
Up here, you morons.
Stepping morons like yourself.
Me down, you moron. Hey, moron!
Separate all that, but no, welcome in.
You can call me Ikai if you want.
Sorry, Burns, I'll not do the welcome or the intro. Burnsy, you give us the intro this week, please.
All right, okay. You're not going to tell people what the film's about because I'm rubbish at that.
You're going to do the intro.
You're doing it.
I'm not going to tell you that. I'll just go into it. So this was the first film that I watched when I was first trying to get into movies because of Daniel. You suggested it, I think.
Tell folk what film it is.
I already gave you that. I said it was going to be about true romance.
Carry on.
I already said that earlier. That was why. Anyway, so the film that I chose was True Romance because it was my scene film, and I've watched very few movies, so it was a limited choice that I had to choose between. It was either that or A Shot at Glory, basically. So, True Romance this time, and then I might get Shot at Glory next time. Second watch for me, first time I watched it was when it was going into lockdown. Say Daniel suggested it to me, and I think that's really what got me into films, because if I was suggested one that I didn't enjoy, like No Country for Old Men or something, then I would have just pied at that stage.
that was a downgrade.
I would have just pied at that stage. So I'm glad a good one was picked on first from my view the first time. So I'll just give my general thoughts on the movie. I'm not going to go in and tell people what True Romance is about because everyone will know. And the clues a bit in the title. It's about romance and crime.
I don't want to cut you off, Bunzy, but it's not really that a mainstream film, to be honest. It really isn't it?
I just assumed it was because it was probably...
It's an obscure film to be watching as one of your first movies, to be honest. I had, like, obviously, I kind of came to movies a wee bit late. It was someone that recommended it to me. I'd never even fucking heard it. You know, there's like an action movie called True Lies, is there no? That ring a bell? I thought that's what it was. I was like, I'm not watching that. I'm not watching that shit. It's not that well known. Because it's obviously Tarantino, but he didn't direct it. Obviously, it'd be a lot more fucking well known if that was the case.
Mm-hmm. Why did you pick it for me, Daniel, then? We'll go into that.
So, at this point, you had barely seen any films. And the reason I picked True Romance for you to watch is I think it's universally likeable. There's so much happening in it. It's quite hard, even if you've never been into films. I think it's a very good entry into what films could be, essentially.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I would say is it is really violent. There is a lot of violence in it. Mm-hmm. I remember once I watched it with Leslie and then Leslie's sister and her man. Her man really, really enjoyed it, but Leslie's sister hated it. The scene where, we'll go into it, but there's a really, really violent scene in it, and she just hated it. She was like, I can't watch this. But it's...
It was one of the... On you go. I was just going to say something. It was one of the things that I was thinking about this, and because you mentioned Tarantino, I think if Tarantino actually directed this, it would have been too violent and too... I think, like, see the big shootout scene at the end and all that, and when that happens, if it was Tarantino, there'd be bloodbaths and blood sputting in folks' necks, and like it'd be too over the top.
That scene at the end is quite over the top too, if you think about it. But I mean, you're right enough. But where does this come in, like the order of films that he's involved in, or Reservoir Dogs was the first?
Yeah, so this is not included in the 10 Tarantino films or whatever.
No, I know that, but what I mean is, like, when obviously he might have had it in the works for a long time.
Well, this was 93, so
Reservoir Dogs was like late 80s, was it not? Like early 90s, very early 90s.
So I think he must have sold the screenplay, obviously, long before that eventually made it to the screen. But
because I'm like, I know obviously Reservoir Dogs was really like an independent movie, but I just don't know how it didn't end up being a Tarantino directed movie. I've not really read enough about it recently to know why that happened.
I watched a little video earlier today talking about how this was this and Natural Born Killers was a story that he wrote that got separated into two movies. Both of the movies they were both presented to the guy that directed them, and he picked one, Tarantino took the other, essentially.
Well, this guy had a good choice.
Fuck that happened.
Natural Born
Killers. I know I watched it not that long ago. Oh, it was drivel, like.
Terrible. It should be good as well, because I love Woody Harrelson and I love Juliette Lewis, and it should be good, but it's just shite. I don't know why it's so shite. But I very much enjoyed this. Tell us more about why you liked it, Burnsy.
So I think the first thing which I noticed when I was watching it is I was surprised by how much I must have been completely glued to it the first time, because I've not got the best memory when watching films that I've spotted. Like, we can sometimes when we're talking about a film, you can mention it. I can't remember one thing about it, and I've only, as I say, this is only the second time watching it, and there were so many scenes which I knew what was coming next, not the dialogue or whatever, but I could remember how the storyline was going. So that obviously proves that I must have been completely invested in it the first time I watched it. And I was completely the same the second time as well. It's like I thought the soundtrack was top drawer, which I didn't really pick up the first time. But I think obviously because you click onto movies, the more you watch them. Whereas for me, you could have had silence or loads of music throughout it. And when I was first beginning to watch it, I wouldn't even click on any of that stuff. So that was definitely good. As I don't know if either you will say this or other people might have this view, but even though at the start how it seems they just basically they meet and they get married really quickly. Like, that didn't bother me whatsoever. Whereas I think if it was a film which I didn't enjoy so much, I would be trying to find plot holes and say, nah, well, didn't like that bit. They should have gave a bit more detail behind it, etc. When you mentioned about the violence in it, is I knew the end scene was coming, obviously, because I could remember it, but I was surprised by how short it actually, like, not because it felt short when I was watching it, but they seem to have fit so much into the ending, because I looked at and there was only 10 minutes to go, and this was before even any gunshots were fired, I'm sure. Which to me is a good thing, because sometimes we watch films and the ending's just like takes so long and they don't know how to end it, etc. It just led up to a crescendo, and then because the thing is, you wouldn't have that scene going on for 20 minutes or whatever. It's not going to last that long in real life to me. It's like it's going to be over and done with really quickly with the amount of gunshots and whatever. So, and I really enjoyed that. Even it didn't get to the stage where there was too much of it for me as well, which is sometimes one of the issues I've got with films. I think too is like it was a perfect blend for me of like romance, crime, and there was some funny moments in it as well. I thought that the scene with Clarence's father and the guy that's in charge of the gang and his was it a caravan he was staying? I can't remember what he was staying at.
Trailer. It's like a trailer. Yeah. That's what we call it. Aye. And he's right next to the train tracks. It's literally like there's fucking trains going. That is a bit of the imagination. Like the trains keep going by all the time. Which I've watched this movie about 20 times probably, start to finish. I'd never noticed that before, how many trains actually go past.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I see it, I'm like, it must be like it happens like just when he kind of waves goodbye to Clarence, and then another train comes right after it. And I think it's like a metaphor, obviously, of what's about to come. Like you just care he's just going to get fucking obliterated, basically. Like, I thought that was pretty clever. Like,
I thought that scene though with him, his dad, and like, that was like completely class, and it did seem
hilarious.
It was hilarious, but it was like, was that shot on one take? Because, or not one, not one take. Sorry, was because when I was watching it, was that all one scene? There wasn't like there didn't seem to be they switched and then they could have like done part of it.
No, it's all one scene now. That's what you mean. It's all one go basically.
Yeah, and I couldn't
actually. He opens the door to his trailer, and then basically he's just standing there, and I can't remember, but somebody puts a gun to his head, and then the next thing the fist comes across and hits him. And then it kind of cuts, and then the next bit he's in the chair. And they say something in Italian about the dog. Rommel, the dog's called Rommel. And obviously I think it must mean they're going to kill the dog, which I don't really know why they do that, but obviously they're just that ruthless. And then basically it's Gandolfini standing behind them. And you know what the fuck's coming, but it's class. The dialogue is just
that's what I was going to say. And I think as well it's weird that that's my favourite part of the film, but it's weird when you're watching a film that it's two people that aren't even main characters in it, that usually
the reason that you pick it out that much is because those two are like, obviously they're not major characters in the movie, but they just absolutely steal the show. Mr. Walken is just like fucking unbelievable.
Yeah.
And Dennis Hopper, like, I've kind of heard stuff about Dennis Hopper, and obviously he was a crazy, like, into the drugs and all that and stuff, but and this, like, he just that kind of concerned father, like, he's quite muted, I would say, and that bit between the two, it's just like you can tell in his face when he's breaking his balls about them being spawned by you know what's, and you can tell in his face after he says it, he knows what's coming. Like, it's just genius, man. Absolute genius.
He's already accepted that. I would say that's in my top 5 scenes in any movie, is that interaction between those two. I just think it's so perfectly done.
I've got that written in my notes. It's one of the best scenes in the movie. That's the eggplant scene. That's what I've written.
And I think as well for me, that's one that I didn't really spot as much the first time, because obviously I was just watching a film probably, whereas now I'm sort of picking up more stuff as you watch, just in general. And the other bit I liked was the fight with Alabama, and I didn't even know the guy's actor's name. I just noticed the guy that plays Tony Soprano because I've watched I've watched The Sopranos with Dubskill. That's why before you, in case you're wondering in shock who I even know who that is. But I thought that was like, it was weirdly entertaining. I thought, because she's obviously, I thought she was really good in the film as well. I don't even know who.
She's tremendous. Patricia Arquette.
Yeah.
I would say she, because obviously it's her and Christian Slater that's the lead, and I would say she's fucking a million times better actress than what he is. He's not bad in it, but there's just times when he's a wee bit kind of like, you can tell he's ready to smile and stuff like that. I think they chose him a lot for the look. He's kind of got that, like, I don't know, kind of like that. He's a bit geeky and stuff like that, the way he looks and stuff. A bit scruffy and that. Whereas she's just fucking absolutely sensational, man. Just super animal.
That scene with her and James Gandolfini, the way she plays it, like, until they take the sunglasses off. And then you see the genuine fear that she's been covering up with, like, of the bad one. Like, little things like that are what set this apart for me. Because, like, the glasses come off and her acting, she's fucking terrified underneath it.
Yeah.
The glasses on, she looks confident as fuck. Like, and I know it's so small, but that's so fucking brilliant for me.
And the thing with him as well, like, obviously it's easy just to say like, how good Gandolfini is, but the weird thing about it is, like, he's smiling like all the way through it when he's talking to her and stuff like that, which is just like, it shows that he's psychotic, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, why would you be smiling at that time? But it's just because he's got a wee hang for her. But at the same time, he almost enjoys his work that much. It's just fucking mental. Like, but he's so good, man. That moment.
A good thing he does as well is, like, and it's a great part of the script, is you only get to see really him acting in 2 scenes, right? And he's being a henchman, cutting the guy's hand open early on, and then he's a violent, horrible man. And there's very little there to find out anything about him, but you learn enough that he goes,
exactly.
The first time I killed somebody, it was a wee bit tricky. I felt sick. The second time it got a wee bit easier after this, and he explains how he's got to this point of.
Well, it's fun. I've actually made a note about that because I know obviously we've mentioned Sopranos loads of times, but there's a thing in The Sopranos where Chrissy is like having sort of nightmares because he's killed somebody, and Big Pussy in The Sopranos is kind of like explaining to him, the more you do, it'll get easier. I thought that was interesting that it's a guy, the main character of The Sopranos is having that conversation like with Patricia Arquette's character when she's like lying on the ground, like dead, basically. But I thought that was really interesting that he made that reference. But it's just, the thing is, obviously, it's a similar character to Tony Soprano in one way, but then because he's got that kind of dim-witted, like, henchman vibe as well, where he's like, he could just easily just like shoot her in the head and that'd be the end of it. He's got the coke. The coke is there. He doesn't have to fucking toy with her like how he does, but yet he's like, because he's infatuated with her a wee bit, he's got to do that as well. And obviously that's why it is a wee bit removed, because the one thing with Tony Soprano, for all his like flaws, he was like a really intelligent guy in his sort of field, and that's how he always got over on his kind of like enemies and stuff like that. So I thought that it was just an amazing performance, like, so good.
I know that Kyle's not seen this. Have you seen this, Sean?
This is my second time watching it. The first time I watched it, it was Dubs that recommended it to me in the FIFA chat during lockdown. It was just after I watched Goodfellas for the first time. So this is my second time watching it, and again, like, I enjoyed it the first time and I enjoyed it the second time. I could still remember the majority of what happened because it still feels pretty recent that I actually watched it. But I am just kind of echoing what you guys are saying. I've not really got anything exciting to add. I think this is going to be one of those podcasts that everybody just agrees that it's a good film.
Until we get Kyle's tuppence.
Until we get to Mr. Agenda, who just likes to not like the other folk like. I'm just going to make a point before we move on to Kyle, right? That when he recommended us Of Angry Men, one of Kyle's favourite ever movies, right? We didn't shit in it. I didn't go in with any preconceived ideas going, let's try and find things up with this to try and annoy Kyle. Just gave my honest view, and that was it.
But see, to be honest, Daniel, I did that with this movie. You know what I mean? Like, I sat there and made a film that I've seen countless times. I made notes. I tried to pick fault with it, and really, I'm not going to kind of step on my rating or anything like that. But I couldn't really find many faults with it because it's no like a high concept or anything like that. Like, obviously there is holes in the plot to an extent, but there's not really many places that can go wrong, if you see what I mean. It's a feel-good story, but with the kind of violence and the kind of snappy dialogue thrown in, it's like, well, that formula is just, it's always going to be a winner. You know what I mean?
I think that's almost as a perfect film. One of the scenes you haven't mentioned yet that I wanted to talk about was Gary Oldman as Drexel.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
oh, it's so good.
Unbelievable. And like that scene where he's swinging the lampshade back and forward to him and they're having a wee back and forth. Oh, the tension that builds up, but it's also kind of funny and like the way it's played, he's just a believable fucking nutter, like white guy that seems to making and like
his range is just like, I don't think there's anybody with the range that he's got. But I seen a thing on Twitter about him and it just had a picture of like all the parts that he's played. And he's played like Churchill, he's played like obviously Drexel, he's played in Hannibal. Is it Hannibal movie? He's like a kind of deformed like billionaire. Like it's a terrible movie, but it's just like the guy can just do everything, absolutely everything. It's sensational. And I know you were saying about like there's a bit of humour in it as well. The bit where obviously there's a Richard Pryor movie on the big screen next to Clarence when Clarence is standing there, and he kind of shines Gary Oldman shines the light on himself, and he's like, I know I'm pretty, but I'm not as pretty as a couple of titties. And there's like a big fucking massive pair of tits on the telly. Obviously Clarence hasn't spotted it. He's that
I've got that exact line in my notes. I thought that'd be a perfect name for the podcast this week. I ain't as pretty as a pair of titties.
That'll definitely do. I think we should go to Hunter before Kyle because I'm worried that Kyle's going to be doing this.
Can I just say, Hunter?
No, he's not.
Was it just were you just getting told off for saying stuff, or were you getting told off because of the names of the podcasts that we're using? Was it just you saying stuff?
It was me. It wasn't the name of the podcast. It was a little bit for that because, like as I said, because Laura's mum uses a Spotify, so other devices that are linked to it in the house when it's subscribing. So when the episode would drop, it would be like insert fucking random title that we've used that would just pop up.
Listen, as soon as she seen that title for Smashing Big Bobby, she was right on it. Laura also enjoyed that episode.
And then what was I can't remember the one I said there a week ago. I knuckle deep before the film. That one the other week. And then Laura was like, "Oh, I just I did not expect that any was that foul fucking language coming out of your mouth."
I still think that you shitting all over Point Break hurts her more than you talking about being knuckle deep.
I know, and I think the fact she's obviously not listened to that episode all the way to the end when I done the impression. She's not giving me a mouth for that yet, so.
I'll cut it and we'll put it as a real Daniel. Get that on Instagram.
All right, again, I am going to jump on the hype and praise tune here. This is a great film. Again,
it was the first time you watched it, Age.
I think it was back when it dropped on Netflix, and Laura had been at me to watch it for. It's her favourite film ever, and there was at me to watch it, and then obviously it came on Netflix, so I kind of watched it the same time everyone else did, and I kind of was like blown away. First of all, to the point is that it was definitely. I mean, there's two films before I'd seen this for the first time. This and Casino, and I'm like, why have I never fucking seen these films before? Like they fall right into my sort of my lane for things that I enjoy when it comes to films. And obviously the big names that's in this, obviously I love Sopranos. You're forgetting the fact that Samuel L. Jackson's only in this for one scene. We talk about Gary Oldman as Drexel. He's only in it for like 2 scenes.
And what's his like? His line is something like, "I eat the pussy, I eat the ass, I eat everything." That's only line.
I've got that noted down as well. It's another fucking Sopranos reference, but that's the thing that they brush over in the Sopranos. It's like an old school thing that it used to be like a sign of weakness if you gave cunnilingus as a male. Like and I'd never really heard that before.
No, I had never heard that until Sopranos. It was south of the border down Mexico.
Uncle June doesn't want anybody he gives world class head. It's like I just don't know where it comes from. I was they say about him is like, I think if you suck that, you'll suck anything. But I don't, and his girlfriend says it doesn't translate. It doesn't translate.
It's funny like that. It's definitely a weird thing. I explained that to Ella about the joke because it's one of her favourite films as well. And we watched it this time again, and I was like, "Oh, you understand that reference?" It's just because it was seen as like weak. If you were a fucking gangster, you did not go down in a blood. some reason, for whatever reason, it was seen as like being submissive, I would imagine. But the way Samuel is just like, nah, fuck that, I eat everything, like fucking. And then he's dead. That's it.
Yep, I know that's it.
And there's a bit in Pulp Fiction where I think he's talking about giving foot massages or something like that as well, which kind of that him being in that scene in True Romance reminded me of his scene in Pulp Fiction when they talk about Mrs. Wallace getting the fucking foot massage or whatever, and he's like, I'm the foot fucking master.
That's a thing that if Tarantino directed this,
the
initial sex scene with Alabama and Clarence would have been off beat and fucking horrible shit happening that you would get to see. Like it would be.
What do you think about it? What do you think about the sex scene? I'm intrigued to hear what you think about that.
See, the very, very first time I watched this film, up until like after the sex scene, I was starting thinking, "What the fuck is this?" Like, I'm not going to enjoy this. And I thought it was the very first time I saw it. I knew nothing about it, and I thought it was going to be a straight up romantic, maybe a bit of comedy, like mishap would happen, sort of thing. But it very quickly sort of makes you realise that's not what it's all about. But it's very. It doesn't fit with the rest of the film, is the way I would say.
You think so? I don't know. I think I kind of felt the same way as you. I think when I first watched it, but the more and more you watch it, I think it just about fits in. It's not over the top.
I'd probably say the mayor, the phone box coitus is probably more in line than the lovemaking scene.
That's true.
The thing about the first sex scene as well, actually, the first sex scene, the song by Charles and Eddie, that makes it like acceptable. I love that song that they play. It's just fucking tremendous, man.
The music, the Hans Zimmer music that plays throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there. That's fucking superb, and the fact it's also titled "You're So Cool Too," which is
it's cool. I think it's the best piece of music that's continued throughout a film. If you know what I mean, like it's the same piece of music that defines the whole movie.
Yeah, you don't really get bored of it or anything like that.
No, exactly.
Just the same wee plinky plonky bit, but it just gets like a wee bit more urgent or like a wee bit more calm, depending on the situation. If you know what I mean, it changes ever so slightly with what's going on in between each scene. But fucking class. While we're talking about characters that haven't been mentioned, the guy that's the fucking mole that wears the wire, the wee fucking dick, that's the middleman.
Fucking Bronson.
I was going to say that the scene where the cops catch him when he's got the packet of cocaine, the fact he's getting a blowjob when the car's going up the hill in the first place.
Yeah, but I thought that was strange because I mean it must be a sort of, it's obviously like a sly dig at actors. I think there's two sly digs at actors, and that's one of them because obviously he's openly like sort of gay with the obviously movie producer guy. I think that's kind of established. Yet he's getting a blowjob off like a kind of hot chick at the same time. Obviously, that must be a dig at like actors and they'll just do anything basically. He's obviously he's doing that with the movie producer guy to try and get ahead in his career. So I thought that's a dig, and obviously the audition scene as well. Where is it Michael Rappaport? Is that his name?
Yeah.
And his acting is so bad in that scene, and yet they give him a part in like a movie. Is it a movie or a TV show with Bill Shatner? And it's like I think dig as well. He was terrible. There's no way he should have fucking. Like she cuts him off. The casting director just cuts him off after like 2 lines come out his mouth.
It's like your fight.
It's the opposite. You know what I mean?
It must be hard as an actor because he's acting.
Yeah,
I mean,
it must be absolutely horrendous to do that.
Aye, so he's got to act like a bad actor, which is brilliant. And another one we've not mentioned, Mr. Brad Pitt, who's fucking playing the movie, but somehow is like still iconic. He's got about 3 or 4 lines.
But I would say that, I don't know if you'll know this, but he was never given a line. All his stuff is ad-libbed.
Yeah, I've read that before, that he had no lines in the original script. He was just meant to sit there and like hit his bong and be fucking baked. And he ad-libbed like a couple of lines, and they were all just off him.
We actually never mentioned that he's got a scene with Gandolfini. We totally never mentioned that either. That Gandolfini comes in and obviously just gets all the info about where they are like straight away. And Gandolfini just as he's leaving, he's like, "I might see you again." Brad Pitt's just sitting there with Eliza, and then the next thing is like, "Tell me, you condescending prick."
And the way he says he can't say condescending. He's like, "You're condescending." It's fucking.
He's fucking sensational.
Yeah. Unbelievable, man.
That's kind of going back to what you were saying, Guns, about Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper. Like, they've hardly in the movie. It's the same with Brad Pitt. The performances, Gary Oldman, they gave so much to basically so little. Like, I wonder how did they convince all these folk to be in these movies? I just didn't understand.
Well, on that, there's a bit of trivia that I'd read. So basically, I think Tony Scott was trying to get Gary Oldman involved, and he didn't have the script at this point. He just basically said, "Oh, you're playing this white guy who thinks he's a black guy who's also a pimp," and then Gary Oldman laughed and said, "I'm in." That was it.
Yeah.
The context that I told just said, "I'm in."
It's very star-studded. It's like a huge ensemble cast when you think about it.
Yeah.
We've not even mentioned an absolutely massive star that's in it, and he's not even credited as the person that he's meant to be playing either.
Val Kilmer as Elvis.
And I wondered how the fuck that came about, and because he would have been a big star at that point as well.
So again, on the trivia, he was wanting the role of Christian Slater's role, and then thought he was getting in, and basically they dressed him up as fucking Elvis and made him be the mentor.
Yeah, because you don't even really see his face or anything.
They were refused the rights to use Elvis's image, so they had to change it to call him the mentor and not fully show him because they weren't allowed to.
But they constantly mention him throughout the movie.
They sunglasses. Does that mean they like references to him, but they just can't use?
There's the bit where the guy outside the diner or whatever it is reading a music magazine or something like that. And Christian Slater obviously then starts talking about Elvis fanatics. The guy's just looking at him like, "You're a fucking Elvis fanatic," right? So it's clear who he's imitating, Val Kilmer. But,
and even at the end, they called their son Elvis as well.
Yeah, exactly. Elvis Aaron, which is Elvis Presley's name.
That's a great point you've just made there, Dubs, as well. That the best bit about that scene at the cafe where he's going on and on about Elvis, and the guy's like, "What the fuck's this guy going on about?" And he done it at the bar right at the start with the first woman too. He obviously just loves it. But at the same time, it's cutting back to his missus getting smashed and battered by James Gandolfini. Yeah. So I love the contrast that he's just so kind of responsive, like doesn't give a fuck in other places.
Fonzie made that point about the eggplant scene. Like, they don't cut away from that scene at that point. But obviously, when Patricia Arquette's getting fucked up, like, obviously they cut back and forth to that. I noticed that as well. That it was a weird dichotomy. That there was a very funny scene happening, and then at the same time, you're like, "There's jeopardy here." Like, she's not going to make this.
Aye, so good, man. Fucking.
I think that's testament to how good a movie is as well, right? Because I've watched this so many times, and that scene with her and James Gandolfini, right? I'm still sitting watching that like through my fingers at points. You know what I mean? I'm like, I know what's going to happen. I've seen this unbelievable amount of times. Yet I'm still like worried for like one of the main characters. I'm like, what the hell's going to happen to her here? Like, I think that just summed up how good it is. Like, when you're convinced about these characters that you've taken into your heart over the space of what 2 hours, they're going to die. When in reality, you know what's going to happen. So,
right, Kyle, come on.
He's been eerily quiet.
What he's waiting for me to just come in and shit all over this movie?
Yeah.
Aye.
He's not going to.
Well, listen, when we get recommended movies constantly, you build up this expectation of how amazing it's going to be because you're constantly told by different people that it's really, really good. And this is a movie that I've put off for a long, long time because it's been painted in my head as being this utter masterclass of a movie. It's everyone's favourite movie. And it's just a bit meh. It's probably like...
Especially if you're playing Football Manager and only watching it half at a time, John.
I knew you would expect me to have been doing that as well, but I did watch this movie with full attention. But before I go on to talk a bit more about it, I just wanted to point out, guys, that it is my birthday coming up on the 28th of June. Planning to go to the cinema, Livingston, might see Spider-Man. Just going to tell you exactly where I'm sitting, just in case you want to send me somebody along to meet me. I think this would be a really good way to treat me on my birthday, like Clarence got on his birthday.
Is this the cartoon?
At first, I thought you were wanting us to come with you, but now they're
So
like,
it's like,
You never got to click onto that.
Just after he slagged off the film that we've all been raving about it.
I know.
Do you know what? I actually did really enjoy it, guys. It was a good film. It was one of those ones I was watching it and I was like, I don't know if I'm following this plot properly, and I wasn't thinking that the plot was particularly great, but it was filled with really good actors. That each of the scenes were really good, and you've already mentioned multiple of them. Even the scene where she's sitting out wrapped up in the blanket after they've just spent the night together, like. You could just tell she'd like instantly invested in him. He invested in her, and then she reveals everything to him. And because I watched it, and I was a bit like, "Oh, this is a bit weird," because his character transforms dramatically throughout the movie. Like he's a complete geek, and he's a bit weird, and he's all of himself. He doesn't look like he's got any pals, and you just felt sorry for him. And I was like playing a sympathy for him, and then he instantly turns into this. Thinks he's a gangster, he's a hard nut, and he's like super confident and over aggressive, and he just changes dramatically. But you can see why, because he's just carrying this fantasy that he's going through. That this is exciting to him. It's new. He's never had anything like this, and he's just jumped in with 2 feet.
Yeah.
But again, what I would say on that, right? Again, obviously referring back to James Gandolfini's scene where he's talking about his first kill, how he felt sick. Then you've got Christian Slater just rotting in with fucking 2 Big Macs and fucking chips. And I killed him, by the way. I'm starving. This is the best hamburger I've ever eaten.
Right.
and she's like turned on by it, which is that's what sort of their whole relationship builds on. I felt like, because you're saying that what you say is spot on, Kyle. Like he's a proper geek that works in a comic book store that loves going to kung fu movies. But then as soon as he's got this woman to protect, I feel like as if he wants to prove that he can be this protector for her. Do you know what I mean? He can be the one that she can rely on. And he just wanted to go and sort of prove that point. And then suddenly he's ended up with the cocaine by mistake. Dude, that's it. You're fucking. You're the fuck all you care about it.
It's very the bit that really. I don't know why I found it too funny that his way to woo her, this really good looking blonde that's came out of nowhere and she's over the top flirting with him. The way to win her over was to show her a first edition of Spider-Man comic. Just thought that's fun. Like, why did you think that was going to work? But obviously she was paid to be there, but he thought that it did work and he thought he had all this charm. I thought that was a great scene. The eggplant scene was brilliant. Like it builds up, doesn't it? It builds up, and you find yourself getting more and more invested in it. And it's one of those ones. And you mentioned 12 Angry Men before, Daniel. When I watched 12 Angry Men, as you get throughout watching it, you find yourself sitting further and further towards the TV. And I found in this scene in particular, I found myself sitting up and paying attention and leaning forward and just watching it. And then it is a bit over the top with the violence and the action in it. And that bit, I usually get lost a little bit. I prefer the story aspect of stuff. So like when they're talking or when they're developing the story, I prefer that to the killings and the shootings and all that kind of shit. So that bit was a bit like, it was a bit too much and felt Tarantino-y. It felt very 80s is probably the best way to describe it. But no, I did all have good. I've all the notes that I've taken is about one of my notes. It's weird seeing Gary Oldman like this because I feel like he's been 65 for the last 20 years. He's always just looked old to me.
Well, that's his name, eh? So.
Well done. The excessively long winch that Patricia Arquette has with his dad is a bit weird.
That's fucking hilarious.
It's like,
so funny.
am I watching fucking Back to the Future here? What's going on?
It's weird how that lingers, eh? It does linger for such a
And then he says...
He make a comment after it as well about...
It's like, he's right, she does taste like peach.
Son of a bitch was right, she does taste like a peach. It's funny. And Christian Slater isn't even really that bothered about it.
No.
He's almost like, I want my dad to know what I've got here. Like, I don't really give a shit. I've not really got a relationship, do you know what I mean? So it's not like he's stepping on any toes. Yeah.
But no, really enjoyed it. When I quite like watching a movie start and telling you all the cast that's in it, because usually nowadays if you're just straight into the movie, then you need to sit and read all that at the end. I quite enjoyed because It was one of those ones I'm looking, I'm like, shit, I know who that is. And then it was just more and more and more big, what are big names now that were popping up on the screen that may have not been as big at that point. Because this is about 7 or 8 years before Sopranos. So James Gandolfini being in it. I was like, shit, that's class. And then I found myself researching it a little bit more, like looking into how big was he at the time. Well, he wasn't that big. Neil was Brad Pitt. Like, they weren't all that big.
No.
It's a bit like when you go, I don't know, when you stick an old football match on and it's like the under-17s and all these players that have now made it big. You're like, shit, they were all here at that one time. And it was just a really, if you look at the cast now, you'd think, Jesus Christ, that must be one of the most expensive films ever made. But back then, it's you can tell it's quite a light budget for that. But no much more to add, guys. I put Patricia Arquette overshadows Slater. I've never been a big fan of him anyway, so
I can't really. You guys have watched a lot more movies now than I have, probably. So I don't really know what he's in.
Christian Slater was like a really big deal doing about this time, so the early to mid 90s. I think his biggest blockbuster was Robin Hood. So he plays Robin Hood in the old one, the old famous one.
Right.
Prince of Thieves or whatever it's called. The one with the
I was going to say that.
That one. And then after that, he just went off the rails. He was one of those like 90s Robert Downey Jr. types that just
really?
I don't know what happened, if it was to do with him being difficult or whatever it was. He just stopped getting cast in films. Now he's like a fucking...
Robert Downey went to jail, did he not?
Yeah,
he had really bad issues.
It's got here on IMDb that Christian Slater's known for the movies Very Bad Things, True Romance, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and Broken Arrow.
Broken Arrow was the other big one at the time, aye. So he was in all these big movies and then just disappeared. He was in nothing.
Yeah.
I told the Man Baz and Christian Slater story before, didn't I, when we did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
I've never heard it.
These sweaty T-shirt ones. I went to see One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the play dubs, and Christian Slater was the star. He did the Jack Nicholson part. And he chucked a sweaty shirt into the crowd at the end, and I ended up almost in a fight with these 3 women for this shirt by mistake. And then suddenly I realised what I was doing. I was like, why am I fighting over this man's fucking shirt with these women? Fucking funny, like. But he was brilliant in that, like, absolutely amazing.
Oh, was he?
Aye, he was
really,
outstanding. I loved it. Him and Mackenzie Cook was in it, playing, I can't remember what part he was playing. Few relatively famous folk were in it. It came to Edinburgh.
I wonder who Mackenzie Cook was playing. Fucking hell.
I can't remember what character he played. But he was they were all
like isn't there like a really... Isn't the guy from Back to the Future in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yeah. Danny DeVito's in it too.
I know that. Martini is it called? Not.
I can't remember his name. But so that's off topic. But I'm glad you liked this film, Kyle, because like I don't know.
I knew it was all a ruse what he was saying, all that shit. I don't see how anyone couldn't enjoy this movie. That's what I was saying earlier. It's more like it's a fucking high concept or like there's no real meaning behind it or anything like that. It's just a fucking enjoyable ride. Do you know what I mean? That's
exactly. I would say even for as violent as it is, and Laura, they've watched it, she hates anything that's over the top violent, but the fact that this is her favourite film, like, it just shows the everything that surrounds it. Like the performances, the story, the concept, the visuals. Obviously, it is very late 80s, early 90s. That sort of neon-y, sort of kind of bright stuff as well. And then obviously the performances, as I've said, and that's like, I guess there's something about, I guess, so it's kind of, they're almost kind of, you're rooting for them all the way through the film. You want them to get the happy ending because there were these 2 misfits that fell into this and then they still came out the other side.
But that's the genius of great writing. The fact it's literally a 2-hour movie, invented like characters, yet you're sitting there like rooting for them and hoping that they come out at the other side. Yet really, they're a figment of somebody's imagination. That's fucking genius. Really, isn't it?
I think with this movie as well, it could be one of those movies that if you've watched it at a younger age, closer to the time that it came out, that you enjoy it a bit more. I don't think I'd put it anywhere near like a top movie for me, but watching it now in 2023, obviously it's a long time since it was out, and you guys must have watched this, early teens when you first seen it?
No.
I just feel like it was good, but I don't think it was great. It wouldn't be anywhere near a top list for me. It's several. I think it's a bad story. Obviously, the plot's not the best, but some really good acting in it. I think it misses quite a bit for it to be up on that pedestal of being a great movie. I think this is one of those ones when you put the scores out, we'll definitely get the comments on the messages saying that this is a 5, this is a 0, or this is a 5, this is a 1. Like I think it's either there or thereabouts for people.
I think you'll be upset, so there won't be any 0s or 1 folk out there.
Nah, obviously I don't really want to give like scores away or that, but I actually found it difficult to score it, and I'll explain that at the time. But I think this will be high across the board. To be honest, I just think it's a fucking fantastic movie.
Well, does anyone else have things they want to chip in for this movie?
Before we go to trivia, just one thing. A character we've not mentioned yet, I don't think he even gets named. I think he does get named once in it. But the bodyguard with the ponytail that fucking...
Who is that, actually?
He gets called Boris. He gets called Boris.
And he's just like, I fucking hate cops. And he's just a madman. And it could have all been quite calm. If he was there, that scene would have been completely different.
Yeah.
And this whole character you know nothing about, he's the one that sparks everything into fucking chaos.
When he comes in hot right from the get-go, like he's not happy about Christian Slater having a gun, whereas obviously Lee Donowit's character's just like, fuck it, Ken. Who cares if he's got a gun? Like, we're all friends here. But Boris isn't happy with it. Right off the bat, when they've got fucking semi-automatics in that, then fucking he's not allowed a fucking water pistol, do you know what I mean? So right away he's like, he's on heat for the start, that guy, Boris.
He seems like cocaine that he's not.
Wow.
Yeah.
He also stars in Robin Hood Men in Tights. Was that not the parody of Prince of Thieves?
Yes.
He plays Little John in the Robin Hood Men in Tights.
That's funny.
Little John.
Well, let's get some trivia unless anybody wants to have more to say. If Sean wants to jump in there, more comments on it?
No, I've tried to jump in a few times, but I just kind of got a word in. But I was just going to say, on you, Kyle, how you said like at Disney, this definitely to me feels like a cult, like hit film. At Disney, I've only seen it twice, and obviously I'd never heard it until Dubs had recommended it during lockdown. But even watching it last week, it does feel like a heavy cult film, but like it was really good. Like if I went on the street now and stopped something and said, "Have you seen Have you seen True Romance?" They'd probably say no. What's that?
I find that
it's totally not a mainstream movie.
Definitely not.
Because that exact conversation, Sean, I've had that loads of times. Because any time I get recommended, recommend me a film, this is always one of the ones I'll recommend to folk. And I know one of the reasons I do it is 99% of folk go, I've never even heard of that.
Mm-hmm. It's a good like opener for someday, like, you know what I mean? Because it's one where they'll be like, fucking hell, I've never even heard of that before. And then, like Kyle was saying, like when you see the cast and you're like, fuck me, how have I missed this one? It's almost just because, I don't know, it wasn't really that pushed that hard or marketed heavily or whatever, I'm not sure. But fucking underrated.
Think about it, without this movie, probably wouldn't have Morons reviewing movies, because with this sparked a little interest for Burnsy to get into movies. So we maybe do have True Romance to thank for the birth of Morons reviewing movies. Second of its name.
Definitely. Because after that, we started Movie Club, right after Burnsy watched that film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
It's all come full circle because Dubs was then invited into it, he then fucked off and never come back. 2 years later down the line, here he is, 2 weeks in a row.
But it's interesting that you should say that, actually, because I did, before we agreed, what was it, Memento and Manchester by the Sea, I kind of kept keeping an eye out for if you were going to do True Romance, and I kind of mentioned it a few times to you guys, like at various occasions, like when he's watching that, when he's reviewing it, because I wanted to come on for that movie. That was going to be like my debut appearance, because it's just like a stone cold classic.
Yeah, you're getting your hat trick ball, as they would say on Soccer
Yeah. Yeah.
Fucking regular these days, eh? Sick of the sight again.
When he's recording Traffic then?
Next week.
Traffic will be the next movie that comes up on to be reviewed, but we will watch that this week and get it in time for review next week. But Hunter, let's jump to some trivia. We've dragged on the people for nearly 50 minutes into listening to this recording. They'll be sick of us, they'll be wanting the scores. Let's get this wrapped up.
Alright, so my first point you've already written off me with the Holton Road thing with the two films. So second one is, although this film was not directed by Tarantino, it's still considered part of the Tarantino universe. The first clue is that Lee Donowitz is actually the grandson of Sergeant Donnie Donowitz from Inglourious Bastards.
Oh.
And the second piece is that Mr. White in Reservoir Dogs mentions working with a girl named Alabama.
All right.
What's that?
He does that in a few of his movies. This thingy, Travolta's character in Pulp Fiction's meant to be the guy's brother from Reservoir Dogs. Right? And they had in the works they were going to do a movie about those two.
And I'm sure, I forgot to note it down, but I'm sure there was also, it's not been confirmed as a direct link, but there's something that links this to Kill Bill Volume 1 as well. I think it's maybe a line that Uma Thurman's character says is something from this film as well.
That's quite cool though, because I'm sure you mentioned the trivia at the time for Reservoir Dogs that the reason that movie with the two brothers never got made was by the time Tarantino had the funding for it, they were too old.
That was it, yeah.
Too old, and they just scrapped the whole idea because they didn't want to get different actors to play them. So that's it.
Speaking of too old, we'd just like to do a big Morons shout out. Congratulations to Al Pacino on his new baby.
And De Niro.
And De Niro.
Fuck De Niro.
It's not a child.
Somebody did.
He's a prick.
Let's face it, that was the artificial insemination. There was no pumping going on there at all.
Congratulations to 150-year-old Al Pacino.
It's done with a turkey baster.
Point about here. So Harvey Weinstein had thought that Christian Slater was too good looking to play Clarence, and told Warner Brothers that he would rather have someone like Steve Buscemi. There's a wee vote of confidence.
What?
Fucking hell.
Played the part. Warner Brothers immediately fired him for this request. So Harvey went up to Tarantino and told him that they are going to be partners and not associate with Warner Brothers after this film. So that's weird. The track's weird if you ask me, with Weinstein and fucking Tarantino.
So this movie is what spawned Weinstein getting in bed with Tarantino, which really started him having free reign over all his movies.
Yep.
Wild.
Tarantino's going to be the next one exposed, isn't he, Sean?
Probably, aye. Well, it's already been exposed. It's everywhere on the internet that he's a fucking wrong in, so...
He's got off a wee bit scot-free with all that stuff, isn't he, Quentin? It's just kind of like everyone knows what he knew, but he just kind of gets away with it. It's not acceptable, really, is it?
He was
tighter with Weinstein than anybody else. Like him and Weinstein were the closest to the any actor-director combination.
Yeah,
he was on Joe Rogan after the Weinstein things came out, and he was defending him.
Yeah, was he? I've seen that one as well.
It just all seems to go under the radar just because he's kind of well regarded in the film business, but with that and all the kind of like the foot fetish and all that, he's just he's not for me. Like,
sorry, when you go down,
I was just going to say I do think that Tarantino is like fairly severely autistic or something. There's something no right about him. He's no wired up the same as other people. Like, it's to come up with all the stuff that he comes up with, the way that he does it, and all, his brain can't be wired the right way.
I was actually going to say that. Sorry, Hunter, to step over your trivia again, but there's lines in this movie. They say twice, something's got to be rotten in Denmark.
Yeah,
like I've never heard that before.
Me neither.
And obviously, when you look into the trivia as well, there's a couple of lines in Pulp Fiction. I think Marcellus Wallace, I'm going to get medieval on his ass, or I'm going to bust a cap in his ass. I don't think they'd ever been used before, those phrases, and that they've now become like common parlance. And it's going into what you're saying, Daniel, about having that sort of a school to come up with these lines. Like Christian Slater in True Romance calls Patricia Arquette's character a 4-alarm fire as well. It's like, where the fuck does this shit come from?
It's mental, man. I watched sorry, I'm doing exactly the same thing and jumping on you, but I watched the interview with Tarantino before, and they were talking about all these little things that have become pop culture because of him. So they asked him, like, what is the thing that you've done most, that you're most proud of that's become part of the culture? And he said it's a slow motion walk music that's been copied. So he basically, the music by Kill Bill, where it goes do 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 when they're doing the big slow motion walk. He's like, that's now become the music for every slow motion walk that ever exists, whether it's like for the X Factor to Team America, they do it, Kung Fu Panda does it, like it's become.
It's very similar to what I was saying. It's something that's just made its way into pop culture when it was really kind of him that came up with it to an extent.
Right, I've got a final few points here. The first day of shooting, it became clear that Christian Slater and director Tony Scott had different ideas on how to play Clarence. So Tony Scott gave Slater a copy of Taxi Driver and told him to go home and watch it as homework. On the trivia section of the DVD special, it features reports that Quentin Tarantino sold the script for about $10,000. With this money, he purchased a red Chevy convertible that Vincent Vega used in Pulp Fiction.
Wow.
Invest his money back in.
Yes. And the final bit now, this one I didn't actually have to research for, I had it up here as knowledge. So Patricia Arquette's closing monologue at the end when she's sitting on the beach was actually used by Paolo Nutini on his latest album on the song called Afterneath. And the film is also the inspiration for the track Robbers by the 1975. So if you haven't listened to them, go give them a listen, kids.
Nice.
People will be stealing your trivia now, Hunter.
Exactly.
Want you read?
Well, I just want to add one bit in there. I was just finding it there now what I listened to earlier. So the movie that Tarantino done called My Best Friend's Birthday was the inspiration for this movie, where he actually stars in it and he plays a character called Clarence. And it says here, it's Mickey's birthday and his girlfriend just left him, so his best friend Clarence shows him a birthday he'll never forget, which was a precursor to making True Romance. So Tarantino actually tried to get it out as a big movie himself. But yeah. One Daniel can add to the list of movies that he's meant to be watching additional. So how did you get on with Joe and his volcano?
I've still not seen it, right? But I was going to keep this till the end to talk about it because I've still not watched it, because I'm adding another one that I'm only going to watch that I didn't expect you to watch, right? But it's got Gary Oldman and Patricia Arquette in it. And I just, my mate Dean, a few years know, he said, oh, have you ever seen this movie Tiptoes with Patricia Arquette and Gary Oldman in it? I was like, and it's got Matthew McConaughey in it too. I was like, nah. I looked up the plot. The plot is this woman meets Matthew McConaughey and they get engaged, right? And she then goes to meet all his family, and his full family are midgets. Gary Oldman plays a midget. Like, all these folk play like tiny little midgets. And the whole movie is her being like, oh my God, is my baby going to be a midget? That's the whole plot of the fucking film. So
I've fucking heard of this.
Gary Oldman, Peter Dinklage, Kate Beckinsale, Matthew McConaughey, Patricia Arquette. It's a good cast.
What about the movie when he plays Churchill? Has any seen that? I'm guessing no. Gary Oldman, no.
No for me. British history stuff, just no for me, man. Like, I've still not seen any of that shit.
The only reason I'm asking about it is because I think there's a bit where he's on the London Underground or something like that, and apparently it's one of the worst scenes in movie history. He's got some sort of monologue or something that he comes out with, and it was just so obviously like made up, like something that he definitely never said. Churchill was obviously known for, amongst other things, being like quite a good orator and stuff like that. And apparently there's a scene in it that he just rambles absolute shite on that tube or something like that. I was hoping somebody had seen it because apparently it's really embarrassing and bad.
No, seen it.
Well, Daniel, you enjoyed your 4.3 rated Tiptoes, which came out in 2002. Not even old.
Unbelievable.
Well, listen, let's get to the scoring now. We'll have rabbited on an awful lot about True Romance. Burnsy, you did pick it. You get to go first.
5.
What? Fucking hell.
Kel's just walked away in disgust there.
Dubs.
Yeah, like I said that earlier on, I was kind of I brushed on this that it's a hard movie to rate because your scoring system obviously it's either 5 or 4.75, and I don't want to give this movie a 4.75. I think it's an insult. But if it was a marks out of 100, I wouldn't give it 100 out of 100. If that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think there are better films in this, but yeah, it has to be a 5 for enjoyment, writing, acting. The plot, obviously, I did brush upon. The plot is a wee bit over the top. The way it ends is a wee bit over the top. There's a lot of violence as well, but I don't think it takes away from the experience. So 100%, 5 out of 5.
5 out of 5. Daniel?
This is going to be 3 5s. This is in my top 5. This is in my top 5 favourite movies of all time. And
exactly, I feel the same way.
So the other ones I've given 5s to, which was very few and far between. This, I enjoy this more than most of those, so it needs to be a 5. I think it's perfect for what it is.
Sean?
Sorry guys, I'm going to bring it down just a wee notch. I'm going to give it a 4.5.
Yes, that'll do.
A 4.5. Hunter?
I was thinking the same as Dub was. It was kind of like if there was a possibility to give this a 4.85 or a 4.9. So I had initially scored at 4.75, but I need to face it. There's going to be some reference to this film in my house when I move in, so it needs to be a 5.
Can't say any fairer than that. Hales now, like, frantically adjusted his score a wee bit.
Yeah.
From 1.5 to 2 or something.
No, he doesn't want to be the outlier.
Did I put it up to 1? Did I put it that high?
You said at one point you really enjoyed this movie. You flitted back and forth so much.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
So I did enjoy it. I wouldn't rush to watch it again that quick. I probably would watch it again a couple of years down the line. I'd watch Moneyball 5 times over before I watch this.
I know.
Oh, shut up.
Love Moneyball.
You see, in a week, you'll have forgotten what's happened in this film. It'll be like a first time watch all over again. So.
I might forget I've even scored it and watched it. I don't think it's anywhere near a 5. I actually came in with a lower score than what I'm going to give it, and I have been.
Yeah, I just said that you were going to do that.
With the way these have, the way with it, and like I say, I did enjoy it, but it's not any better than a 3.5.
What was the lower score you were going to give it?
I was thinking at 3. I thought it was just a middle of the road. 2.5 to 3. I'll give it to a 3.5.
You've definitely shot it just because of the
What
Instagram.
that is.
That's terrible, man. What were you got?
No. Listen, I'm happy to listen to your opinions and remember bits and get excited again by it. I don't think that I should just be closed off to.
I think that's totally fair. Manchester by the Sea, I came in with a score and I changed mine by the time we discussed. That's what movies are about, man.
But there's little bits that you guys bring up, and like shit. Yeah, actually, I did laugh at that because I've not taken as much intensive notes and wrote down a score at that point based on it. You bring up parts from like shit, I forgot about Samuel L. Jackson's scene, and actually that was really funny. The whole engagement was really good. So that has to then spark up a little bit for me. I just feel that it was just a bit too over the top in a lot of different places for me to enjoy, but it becomes personal taste at that point.
Aye, man. I'm happy with that.
Lock me in. Burnsy, have you been able to do the maths yet?
Aye, there's a lot of really high there. That was a 4.67 overall.
A 4.67. Any ideas where you think that'll bring this in, guys?
Top 5.
5.
It's top 5. I'm gutted though because it's just slightly above Spider-Man No Way Home.
Man.
So this movie now knocks Spider-Man out of the top 5. This comes in at 4th, just overtaking Parasite, but just behind 12 Angry Men and The Shining.
Good place for that, I would say.
I'm fairly happy with that.
I think if you'd given it a 4, Kyle, we probably would have had a new top movie. If you'd been a wee bit more generous, then we would have had it. But that's fair.
What's your top movie? It's Goodfellas, isn't it?
Yeah, so the top half, basically, I'm not saying top half, that's a lot of movies. The top section's got Goodfellas, 12 Angry Men, The Shining, now it'll have True Romance, Parasite, Spider-Man, No Way Home, Silence of the Lambs, The Green Mile, 7, and then one that should never be anywhere near it, but No Country for Old Men is now 10th.
I've got to say, as much as I love Spider-Man, that just sticks out like a sore thumb in amongst
That's
it all.
nice.
And
I said that at the time. You watch it again and it'll slide.
I think because it was at the cinema that you gave you felt it was better than what it was. I think that was a big issue.
I've felt that way. See, when I watched Joker at the cinema,
great example.
I was absolutely blown away with it. And I've watched it again since, and I was like, oh my god, I must have been in a fucking trance through that movie because I didn't enjoy it at all.
Well, we discussed that.
Weird how that happens.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Same thought as you. When we did the Joker for this, I think before watching it, we probably all had it high 4s or 5s, like before watching it again, and then we all came in with like 3s, like it. But every one of us, it took a dive in a second viewing, like.
Yeah, and then they're doing another one.
Yeah,
like,
that'd be shit.
Honestly.
I mean,
it's run for the hills with the reviews that you got for the first one. They're not going to get fucking any higher. You know what I mean?
I'll be scoring it down.
Well, guys, that does bring us to the end of a quite well debated movie of True Romance.
Is this the longest podcast ever?
No, they used to be about 2 hours long before we dropped them into one movie. I think this might be the longest single movie that we've done for a while.
That's what I mean for a single picture.
I think also probably the longest that we've not even rambled off on a separate tangent that's swallowed up the majority.
That's true, actually.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've got 3 pages of notes here. Like I've actually just not bothered talking about half the shit because I feel like I've kind of rambled on enough. I feel like it might wreck the podcast if I talk about it anymore.
Well, listen, I just want to say a big thanks to Dubs coming on to join us again. He had requested for this one, and we were more than welcome to have him back after the storming performance we got from the downloads from his last appearances. If you are listening to it, we will have broke over the 5,000 downloads. By this point, we're literally 2 downloads away from hitting 5,000. So thank you to those that have downloaded, those that are listening. If you could share our podcast with your friends on your socials, that would be amazing. And also, if you could review the podcast as well. We've got quite a few 5s been popping up in the reviews recently. So, like Burns has been making multiple accounts. All his Tinder account and stuff is all on to it now. But thank you very much.
Share it on his Facebook.
That hacker's what I made a few new accounts for.
His new bed sheets are looking great.
That history Facebook post is one of the funniest things that's happened in a long time for me. Like, I really found it hilarious. I was sitting on my own, like howling, pissing myself laughing at that.
Bed sheets either.
A screenshot of a bed for Amazon, like fucking hilarious, man. Posted on Instagram.
Guys, I'm trying to close us out here. No more stories. Let me close us out. Let's bank that one for next week. But Dubs, we will welcome you back at any time that you want to jump on. Thank you very much for being here and taking part and not letting us speak.
I can tell. Every time I'm on one of my rants, I kind of just have a wee look round the clock and I can just see he's all fucking like fall asleep and
Tails away in the room.
Side eyes.
Half the time. I've left a couple of times and just let you at it.
Right. Just fucking send us a link next time and don't bother you coming on it.
Funny the day off. But guys, as Morons do, bid you farewell.
You're so cool.
Oh, the week with the I was waiting for the time.
Sorry.